lost in the mists of time. What is clear, though, is that we're encouraged to think of hobbits as like humans without being exactly
30 seconds
the same.
before you attack.
Perhaps
Get
in many
ready.
ways they are idealised humans. Certainly the Shire is, in Tolkien's mind, a sort of idealised rural landscape, encouraging a simple, contented lifestyle of home and hearth and family.
There are
Not
threats
that
ahead
hobbits
even
started
greater
in
than what the Dooms
Their
have
earliest
unleashed.
records have them living in the Valley of Anduin, that land between the Misty Mountains and what
The
we
battle
now
starts
know,
in 5,
but then was
4,
known as the Green.
3, 2,
There were three
1.
clear types of hobbit.
All you need to do is
Half-orcs
capture the
who
mission
lived
area.
in hobbit
Got
holes
it?
cut into the sides of hills, and are most similar to what we think of as hobbits, with furry feet. The Stores, who lived in marshy land and were stockier and happier in water, and the Fallowhides, who lived in the woods, were slightly taller on average and a bit more adventurous. These variety of hobbits carried on into the time of the Lord of the Rings, though presumably the Harfoots lived in the foothills
Looks like the mission area is yours to capture now.
We don't know how long,
Disappear!
though it was certainly many hundreds, if not thousands of years, keeping to themselves and focusing on other places. However, around the year
We are in this
1050,
together.
they all started moving westwards in groups large and small in search of a new home.
Healing power.
The reasons are never made 100% clear, but the timing is very
Behold the god of thunder!
The cosmos heals you.
He became known as the Necromancer. Quite soon, his influence started to spread, and the forest became populated by dark and sinister forces. Orcs and giant spiders took form.
Born again!
They were all plagued with rain, retreated to a stronghold in the north.
Oh no!
The forest
Not Cap!
itself became known as
You get a weapon! You get a Second chances.
and the hobbits seem to have sensed all this and headed west, seeking safety on the far side of the
There's a first!
It's perhaps a tribute to their hobbity instincts. It would be many, many years before even Gandalf decided to
We
investigate.
captured more than half of the mission area. Keep
Hobbits
going.
seemed to sense straight away that this was an evil that was in fact good.
Purple's nuts! I am
As an
born
aside,
anew.
it seems that although most of the hobbits left, some didn't. For it was here in the Anduin Valley centuries later that a store hobbit named Deagle found the one.
Dangerous!
It was taken from him by his cousin Smeagol, who
Again!
his village, developed a hacking cop that made it sound like Gollum, and you know how that story goes. And when you think about it, it makes sense that he seemed perfectly Anyway, the main body of hobbits moved westwards. It was quite a legend.
Tremble
that
before
initially
fast!
settled around the town of Bree and the human-occupied areas east of Bree, as well as some others who ended up in places like Dunland, Mordor, and Mordor. But in the year 1601, Shire reckoning, they headed over the Brandywine and settled permanently in what we now know as the Shire, being swiftly joined by the wider diaspora of hobbits. It was largely abandoned farmland and hunting grounds, but still good fertile.
Quantum magic.
In doing so, the hobbits, nominally at least, agreed to pay allegiance to the Kingdom,
Never miss!
the Northern Human Kingdom, and one of the three successor kingdoms to Arnor. For the land of the Shire was mostly, though, they kept to themselves. However, Arthur died
I am at your service.
had been remorselessly attacking the Northern Kingdoms for centuries, and the final battle, known as the Battle of Fornost, happened in the year 1975. The hobbits
keep fighting
insist
until we
that they
have
sent a
winners.
detachment of archers for this battle, though there is some The result of the battle
Together.
was to defeat and the hobbits of the Shire just carried on as they had done. They appointed their own leaders, legends, and continued exploring the larger field ruled by the outside world for another 1,000 years or more. This was possible for a couple of reasons. First, although the Shire is large enough to be self-contained, so no real
Another
external
epic
trade
victory!
is needed, it isn't perhaps the produces enough for all its inhabitants, and Hobbits' natural lack of wanderlust means that they don't really travel far or trade much with anyone else. There was no need for any contact with the outside world, and the outside world had no need to go there. And second, although the Hobbits were completely unaware of it, the Shire was being protected by the Dunedain, the Rangers of the North, descendants of the Kingdom of Gondor. The kingdom may have been destroyed, but the Rangers' sense of duty meant that they did not give up their responsibility to protect the free peoples of those lands. For centuries, Rangers were stationed around the outside of the Shire, and others patrolled the northern lands, hunting down and killing any threats. That's what Aragorn spent most of his life doing, incidentally, and why he knew that part of the world so well. And as a result, most people in Middle-earth had never heard of the Shire or of hobbits by the time of the Lord of the Rings. Hobbits had been isolated for over 1,000 years by then. Treebeard spends a long time trying to work out what Merry and Pippin are, because they don't fit into his memorized list of races. And even the ringleaders
right
spend
heroes
a
can
lot
make
longer
all
than
the
you might
difference.
expect quizzing people about where hobbits might be found and where the Shire might be.
Be wary.
Not that a millennium
No
passed by
time
without
Who are
any
you calling a
contributor to the
raccoon,
Hobbit's peace.
huh?
We know that the goblins invaded at least once, and the White Wolves entered the Shire during the fell winter of 2911. There was also the Great Plague, the Long Winter, and the Days of Dearth, each
I will
of
bring
which are
peace to this universe, no matter the
The Long Winter
cost.
perhaps deserves a bit of a mention, for it is when
Round
Gandalf
one,
started to
go!
take an interest in and develop a soft spot
Perfection
for
is
the hobbits,
unattainable,
as he
but that should
explains
not
to
stop
Pippin.
us from trying to achieve it.
I began to have a warm place in my heart for them in the long winter, which none of you can remember. They were very hard
It'll be
put
coming in
to
30
it,
seconds.
one of the
Stay
worst
strong.
pinches they have been in, dying of cold and starving in the dreadful dearth that followed. But that was the time to see their courage and their
I
pity
didn't choose
for
it.
one another. It was by their pity as much as by their tough, uncomplaining courage that they survived.
I like
wanted
Adam
them
Warlock,
still to
but maybe I'll
survive,
start calling
but
myself
I saw that
Sorcerer
the Westlands
Supreme.
were in for another very
The
bad
battle
time.
starts in 5,
Sooner or later.
4,
They were of quite
3,
a different sort.
2,
Pitiless
1.
and awful.
You have
Come
to
from
stop them
that,
from securing the
I thought
mission
they
area.
would need something more than they had now. It is not easy to say what. Well, they would want to know a bit more, understand a bit clearer what it was all about and where they stood. But you cannot teach that sort of thing to a whole
Ooh, a
people.
touch of healing.
There was not time. And anyway, we must begin at some point with one person. Chosen. And we chosen to choose him. So Gandalf decided to educate the people of the Shire about the wonder world. He decided to start with Bilbo. This is clearly a good move, given what happened. It's tempting to think of the Hobbits' involvement in the great events
One of you nice
where they
aunts.
all rather accidental. Bilbo stumbled across the One Ring. Frodo was the compromise candidate to keep hold of it after Rivendell. Merry and Pippin were included in the Fellowship in order to make the numbers up to 9. So it's missing the force. The wise of Middle-earth, Gandalf, Elrond, Aragorn, and so on, deliberately put the Hobbits centre
Appreciate
stage.
you.
And as Gandalf said, he was chosen as much as Bilbo was. You can sense the hand of Eru Ilúvatar, one Hodor of Tolkien's legend. This is how Elrond. If I understand the right
Requires some aid.
This is the hour of the Shire, when they arise from their quiet rooms to shake the towers and castles of the great. Few of all the wise can foresee it. If they are wise, why should they expect to wait till the hour is struck? You know what happened to Frodo, Sam, Merry and Pippin?
I'll patch you up.
I feel better already.
Well, while our heroes were out saving the world, Saruman's good hobbits, cutting down good trees, generally being terrible idiots. We often focus
I
on
have
the
risen.
actions of Merry and Pippin in the scouring of the Shire at the end of the story, but it wasn't just them. Hundreds of hobbits fought. 19 died, and 30 more were wounded. After that, of course, Sam set to repairing the damage done, replanting the Shire, and the hobbits got back to living how they always had lived.
I can feel the
Technically,
cosmic.
now they were a free land within the reunited kingdom under Aragorn's rulership, and its lands were extended westwards away. But to most
Systems
hobbits,
restored.
most of the time, this probably mattered little. Aragorn ordered that none could enter the Shire without the Hobbits by themselves in their isolation.
Cosmic might returns.
Tolkien makes clear in his prologue that hobbits who still exist today, still avoiding contact with humans, and still much like they were. So what are we to make of hobbits? Not just the heroic ones we know.
That turret is not a threat.
They are an expression of what is really
Quantum magic.
Behold the God of Thunder!
Unite.
The Lord of the Rings does not lend itself to
Still a chance to stop them.
the theme of simplicity and humbleness being the answer to power and hunger for power.
Enemy in our sights.
This is most obvious in how Tolkien
cosmos heals
describes the One Ring.
I
It is
appreciate
more
you.
powerful and more corrupting when held by the already powerful.
Cosmic
The
might
Ring is corrupted by just being Galadriel undergoes a time of
He's
testing
stuck in the
just by
nature.
being offered it, and Gandalf wisely doesn't undergo it at all.
My friends
Does the
are
Hobbit's
here.
healing power?
I need
Sauron's focus on power and strength is his undoing. He simply could not envisage creatures like hobbits making their way to Mount Doom. Still less that they might want to destroy
Keep an eye
something
on this
through which
spot.
they could do so much. J.R.R. Tolkien deliberately
He's
uses
stuck in the
hobbits as
nature.
likenesses of the best of humanity. They aren't perfect, not by any stretch of the imagination, but they
Here
are
is an enemy
capable
to
of
pursue.
astonishing acts of courage, loyalty, and friendship. Their way of life may not have been perfect, but it was happy
Healing
and
power.
contented. We are supposed to look to
Enemy in
hobbits
our sights.
and be challenged by them. What is it that we should truly aspire to? Power over others and respect
Us against the world.
doing the right things. If you'd like to see more videos in the world of J.R.R. Tolkien, please click on the link to the playlist on the left of your screen.
Born again!
This channel will get access to content like this.
Judge! Jury! Executioner!
Bro, what the fuck was that? Oh,
Hi everyone, this is Rod. Welcome
Destiny
to Indie
awaits.
Geek. On this channel we cover the Lord of the Rings and Tolkien's wider legendarium in depth, as well as other great fantasy worlds like Song of Ice and Fire.
They hit a
If you
checkpoint.
like the sound of that,
Now might be
there's
a
a
good time to
subscribe
stop
button
them.
at the bottom right of the screen.
Here comes
While most people
trouble.
know it as Murder, for most of its life the forest had a very different life. A very different Greenwood the Great. And it is old. It's then forming part of a huge primeval woodland that covered most of the earth until wars and continents
still so
shifting
much to
and
do.
Numenorean deforestation took their toll. But from very
Better
early
stop
on,
that
the
vehicle!
elves settled there. First, we have the Nandor, those who passed through on their journey westwards to Valinor, but decided that they were unwilling to
Quantum
cross
magic.
It's
They
now or
instead
never.
settled
Stop
there,
them.
building small communities throughout the field of the great They
I feel
multiplied
better already.
and were eventually joined by one
Fire
This
is real firepower!
Healing decided to make their own island.
Appreciate you.
Some wandered westwards, these communities intermixed, and the new community eventually became
Ashanti's pups!
Destiny awaits.
so it seems to have been for many
bro,
years.
what the
The
fuck
forest
are you
itself
guys
seems to
doing?
have retained
Seriously?
its rectangular shape, and good enough relations were clearly established with the dwarves who built a road. Joining their city of Calvin
Feel the wrath of the
hills to the
All
east.
systems
The
go.
road was subject to Sultan III, and well used it was, until midway through the second, when the dwarves left.
Only 60 seconds left.
Of course, much more has changed at the end of the first and second.
I am at your
After the
service.
War of Rock,
Can you all just fucking kill the storm, idiots?
Middle-earth,
How hard is that?
however, some soon
Us against the world.
such proof of
They
Cinderella
were a
elves
fool to underestimate you.
Again!
Down to 30 seconds.
Living there announced the creation of the Woodland Realm, and soon
I
he
am
was
born
appointed
anew.
as
Minsk is ready to
His
strike.
migratory group were merged with the already mixed elven community and adopted the customs and language of the Sylvan Elves.
Judge,
Names of
jury,
Sylvan forms,
executioner!
The current
elves
score
had lived
is
before they had been
0,
disturbed by the
2,
Valar, living
3.
closer to nature and
Time
just
to switch
enjoying
things up,
life.
including which
And for
side
another
you're
long
on.
age, they maintained neutrality and relative peace in Greenwood.
I will bring
the Great.
peace to this
the
universe,
wars of Morgoth
no matter the
passed
cost.
them by in
You'll
the
need a
First Age,
top-notch
and for
team
most
to
of
win
the
this
Second
one.
Age,
Be
they
wary.
managed to avoid
No
Sauron's.
timeline
However,
exists where
war
Magneto
finally arrived
yields.
for the elves of the Woodland Realm with the forging of the last alliance of elves and men. Gil-galad, king of the elves of the west, convinced King Oropher and the elves of the Woodland Realm to join his and Elendil's forces in finally taking on Sauron. Oropher led his people south, along with his neighbor Andir, king of Lorien. These
We should
Sylvan
give
elves
these humans
had joined
good
the
reason
alliance,
to hate
but
and
hadn't
kill
really
us
accepted
after
the chain of command and launched an attack before Gil-galad was ready. Oropher, king of the Woodland Realm, died in the first
30
assault,
seconds before
and
you
the
attack.
lightly armored
Get ready.
Sylvans were pushed back into what later became known as the Dead Marshes.
Hey, Dandy.
Thousands
Where's Ty?
died.
You two are
When
usually
Frodo and Sam
inseparable.
crossed those
That
marshes
hasn't
many
changed.
centuries later,
In fact,
the
we're
elves
closer
they
than
see
ever.
staring up at
Whether
them
we
from
like
the
it or
waters are those
You guys sharing a
elves.
studio and Hell's Kitchen now?
The battle
I get
was
it.
eventually
Rent's been
won,
skyrocketing.
but when the Sylvans
It's
returned
actually a
home
bit
to
more
Greenwood,
complicated.
it was clear that the
The battle
losses at
starts in
Daggerlad
5,
had
4,
devastated their
3,
population.
2,
With such a small
1.
number of people left, Thranduil,
All you need to do
their
is
new
capture
king,
the mission
could
area.
no longer
Got it?
populate the entirety of Greenwood the Great.
It
Instead,
seems
he focused
extinction
on the
is on the
hills of
agenda once
Thranduil
again.
in the north of the
How
forest and to rebuild his kingdom from there.
Here comes trouble.
In truth, Oropher had already started this process during the Second Age. His capital had been Amon, a high treeless hill in the southwest.
This place looks way too familiar.
Fearing the rising tide of sound of the south. Thranduil merely completed this process, eventually making the move permanent to Emyn He built a complex of chambers and rooms there that we eventually see
is a
towards the end of
mutant's
the Third
greatest
Age
gift.
when Bilbo and the dwarves pass through in The Hobbit. Thranduil was the unnamed elven king in that story, and seemingly had built his new halls in imitation of the legendary beautiful Thousand Caves of Menegroth, the heart of Doriath where his father had lived and perhaps he had grown up. Anyway, Tolkien makes clear that Thranduil was understandably traumatized by what he had discovered. His father and most of his people. And from that moment on, you need to and abandoning as such, other races started to he created the East Divide, a 50-mile by 50-mile chunk of now forested land to the west. The ancestors of the precursors of the Hobbit
will be able to hold
pushing
you for
back the
long,
borders of
Juliana.
the Greenwood little by little. Unnoticed by most, a wizard, newly arrived, set up his home
I
to
feel
roast
like
on
myself
the
again.
western edges of the forest. He became known as Lantis. And near the beginning of the Second Millennium Age, a mysterious magician saw the south of Greenwood the Great as a perfect place. It was hidden away from the rest of Middle-earth and was empty from
I
the
shall
diminished
not be
elf
removed
population.
so
This
easily.
mysterious magician came to Amon Lank in the south of Greenwood the Great, Oropher's abandoned capital, and there built a great fortress. He named this fortress Dol Guldur, or the Hill of the Sorcerer. This magician, who called himself the Knight, began to
I
spread
feel
a
like
shadow
myself again.
within Greenwood the Great, extinguishing lights within and closing it off from the sun. As the necromancer grew in
Moonlight's
power, the
Ankh is no
shadow
longer
across
a
the
threat.
forest also. When nearly half of the forest was covered by the shadow of the necromancer, the elves came to refer to Greenwood as Far New Pool.
I doubt any hell will be able to hold you for long.
As the name
Trying to help.
The necromancer attracted the descendants of Sheila, giant spiders as well as bats and orcs in
Against the world.
The necromancer
not
even
be
seemed to
removed so
control the
easily.
Balchoth, a tribe of Easterlings who dwelt east of Mirkwood and raided the elves of Lorien. As the necromancer's
Down to
influence
30
grew,
seconds.
these creatures occupied the forest and it became thicker, darker, and covered in cobwebs. Thranduil retreated.
You are under my
Until the good elves lived exclusively in and around the Elven King's halls at the eastern end of the northerly forest river, rarely leaving them for fear of encountering the just trading with humans for the things they loved to scratch my back.
You'll have to keep fighting until you have a winner.
Sense of fear throughout the Third Age as Thranduil refused to fight against the evils of Dorothy Records. The necromancer ruled southern Mirkwood without challenging Lorien the Land, building armies of orcs and easterlings within its hidden
Us against the world. It's party time! Get that vehicle to its destination.
Humans living in the Andean Valley were killed or to the east, Smaug arrived, destroying the kingdom of Erebor and the town of Death. Eventually, of course, this growing shadow could not. Gandalf had long
way with
been
the statue of
suspicious
Bear.
what was going on there, and in the year 2063 of the Third Age, he went to investigate. He made it to Dol Guldur, and the necromancer fled before, so his true identity could not be discovered. For a time, which became known as the Watchful Peace, all was quiet, but the necromancer returned in 2460, and things carried on as they had before. Gandalf, still suspicious, returned to Mirkwood in 2850, this time searching for the missing dwarf King Thranduil. He discovered him in the dungeons.
Here they are now.
Even more importantly, he discovered his manner of insanity this whole time. It took more decision, but eventually the White Council, the ceremony at the time, let's not forget,
Wakanda has given us this sacred duty.
Gandalf turned to the quest of Erebor.
I am ready to put on a show!
That's
Only
where
60 seconds left.
He seems more bothered by prisoner than trying to take it.
The moon haunts you.
How the elves and wizards in Middle-earth are about to stage an assault on Sauron. The quest of Erebor was an undeniable success.
Down to 30
The assault
seconds.
on Dol Guldur was less. Sauron was chased in the forest, and the darkness of
Double
Mirkwood was
kill!
lifted for a while.
He's a
But
mutant's
only 10
greatest
years
gift.
later, Sauron, now based in Mordor, sent Khamul and two other Nazgul to reoccupy Dol Guldur. They easily achieved this because the White
Final
Council
10
were now
seconds. It's party time!
respite, Thranduil had left Dol Guldur undone. Slowly, Dol Guldur began to darken the forest around the kings.
Final
This
score.
gave
1,
cover
2,
once again
3.
for Sauron to amass armies of orcs and Easterlings there. Once Sauron's presence had been announced to the rest of the
Well,
world,
you can't
the
expect
orcs
to
of
win
Dol
'em all.
Guldur became much more brazen in their attempts to control all of Mirkwood. They began a series of attacks against the elves of the Woodland Kingdom as their armies grew. After one of these attacks, prompted no doubt directly by Sauron, Gollum escaped from captivity. Aragorn had left him with Thranduil after questioning him about the ring, but for the second time in 2 stories, Thranduil loses his prisoner. The reason Legolas was at Rivendell was to let everyone know. During the War of the Ring, Mirkwood was occupied in a small war of its own as the orcs of Dol Guldur continued to slowly engage the soldiers of the Woodland Realm in skirmishes across the forest. Despite this constant thorn in his side, Thranduil never waged a major offensive against the orcs, and instead spent his time waiting within the Elven King's halls and defending himself and his people. Safe in the knowledge that Thranduil would not attack them, Dol Guldur sent most of its forces to invade the realm of Lorien. They assaulted Lorien multiple times, and every time they were repelled by the elves of Lorien and the power of Galadriel. Despite the constant defeats, Dol Guldur continued to attack both Lorien and the Woodland Realm. Likely, this was a part of Sauron's strategy to divide and conquer Middle-earth. He wanted to keep the
Which
forces
hero
of
do you think
Mirkwood
you
and
wanna be
Lorien
today?
occupied, so they could
Be
not help the
wary.
men of Gondor.
No
or Rohan
timeline
and their
exists where Magneto yields.
as a continuance of this same strategy, on the same day of the Battle of the Pelennor Fields in Gondor, forces from Dol Guldur invaded the realm of
Now,
Thranduil
who
in
am I
Mirkwood.
gonna banish from
Instead
this
of
match?
the small skirmishes seen before, this was a large-scale invasion of the Elven King's halls. After a long battle under the trees involving a forest fire in Mirkwood, Thranduil stepped up and defeated the forces of Dol Guldur. After this defeat, Thranduil apparently did not attempt to take Dol Guldur and secure his kingdom's safety. Instead, he retreated back again to his halls as Dol Guldur reeled from their losses. However, the initiative was taken up by a host of elves from Lorien, led by Celeborn, who crossed the Anduin in boats and took on the remaining defenders of Dol Guldur. The battle was short and swift as the elves of Lorien conquered the fortress. Galadriel then destroyed the walls of the fortress and uncovered its pits.
The
With
right
this
heroes
final
could make
act,
all the
the
difference.
forest of Mirkwood was cleansed. Celeborn did not retreat from Mirkwood once he had conquered Dol Guldur, and instead met with Thranduil in the middle of the forest to talk. They agreed that with the shadow of Sauron gone, they would rename the forest Erin Lascallin, or the Wood of Green Leaves. They also agreed to divide the forest between them instead of returning it all to Thranduil. This is probably fair, as Thranduil had basically abandoned the southern forest centuries ago. They agreed that the realm of
Round one,
Thranduil
go!
encompassed
Never
the
allow
northern part
Krakoa
of the
to
wood
suffer
down
the
to the
same
mountains
fate
of
as
Mirkwood, where his
Genosha.
halls were. Celeborn was given the southern part of the wood, up to the narrows
They'll be
of the
coming in 30
forest.
seconds.
This
Stay
new
strong.
realm was named East Lorien by Celeborn. The vast forest land between the mountains of Mirkwood and the narrows of the forest, which
In
was
that we are
wood,
both
and the
despised by
descendants
the
of
people
the
we strive to
shapeshifter
protect
Beorn,
and
the
lead.
Beornians. And so it was.
You are
In the
very
Fourth Age, the Forest of Green Leaves prospered as the darkness of Dol Guldur was lifted.
The battle
Not that
starts
the
in
political
5,
divisions agreed
4,
to at the end of the Third
3,
Age would last
2,
all that long.
1.
The Wood Elves all either
need to
sailed
stop that
west,
vehicle.
as Legolas did, for example, or, in the words of Galadriel, rose to a rustic folk of Dell and Ken, slowly yet
Invisible?
Back to the netherworld.
Better stop that vehicle!
and no doubt some more have been chopped down as this point was. But for a time under the Woodland and the Warnings, it was Mirkwood's shift from a bucolic home to elves wanting to recapture the simplicity of forest life to a dark, foreboding place where the greatest evil on earth would return to power. And so on. Everyone could see it, bit by bit, year by year, century by century. Forest to reflect its name's darkness. But other than that, no one did. Thranduil retreated. They were like Galadriel focused on their own objectives. The White Council. Sauron was allowed to grow strong. If he had been confronted there and then, perhaps the greater evils of the future could have been prevented, but it happened so slowly that no one really seemed to pay attention. It's a chilling reminder not to leave facing the dark things of this world until they grow even stronger. But also, let's not forget how quickly things returned to light and life afterwards. The Wood of Green Leaves came through in the end. Nature and light and hope did prevail. If you enjoyed this video and want more videos about Tolkien's Targaryen, please click on the link on the left of your screen. Or to support this channel, the best way to do that is by clicking on the link on the right of your screen now. That's all for this time. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again soon.
It would begin as a great forest kingdom, populated with sylvan elves of ancient days, later joined by Sindar
Which hero do you
refugees
think
from
you want to be
Rohan.
today?
Later,
Be
it would
wary.
become a dark
No
place,
timeline exists where
infested with
Magneto
evil creatures
yields.
after Sauron takes over and fortress. Today on Nerd of the Rings, we cover the history of
Now,
Mirkwood.
who am I
The
gonna
first
banish
peoples
from
to
this
settle
match?
the forest of Mirkwood were some of the Teleri elves. As we discussed in my video on the many clans of the elves, one of the groups of the Teleri were the Nandor, and of the Nandor, there is a group that comes to be known as the Sylvan Elves. It is these Sylvan Elves who abandoned the Great Migration in the Vales of Anduin, west of the Misty Mountains. With their kin moving on toward Beleriand, the Sylvan Elves settle in the woodlands to their east, and while this would eventually be known as Mirkwood, for the greatest part of its existence, this forest is known as Greenwood the Great. Over time, the Sylvan Elves are joined by some of the wandering Avari. Those
The right
elves who
heroes could make
refused to
all the
join
difference.
Great Journey from its very beginning. But it would not only be the Sylvan Elves, also known as Wood Elves, that would step foot in Greenwood. The dwarves of Khazad-dûm would travel through Greenwood in order to go back and forth to their realm of the Iron Hills in the east.
I will bring peace to this
Accomplished
universe,
roadmakers,
no matter the
they would
cost.
build a path
Be
that
wary.
goes through the
No
forest.
timeline
For many
exists
long
where
years, it would
Magneto
be known
yields.
as the Great Dwarf Road. We would know very little of what transpired in Greenwood over the course of the first and early
Round
Second
one,
Ages.
I am not the
It would
man
be
I used to
750
be.
years
I
into the
have
Second
found a
Age
greater
when this
cause.
realm would become a kingdom. Around
They'll
the
be coming
same
in 30
time that the
seconds.
Noldor
Stay strong.
under Celebrimbor established the realm of Eregion, a group
Mantis,
of Sindarin
what's a
elves
raccoon?
led by
Oh,
Orofer
they
goes
are the
even further east
cutest
to
animal on
Greenwood.
Earth.
There, the Sindarin elves would merge with the Sylvan elves, and they would take Orofer as their king, thus establishing the kingdom of the Void realm. Among the
battle starts in
Sindar to
5,
accompany Orofer
4,
is his
3,
son,
2,
Thranduil.
1.
Unlike the Grand Kingdoms
You have to
and
stop them from
fortresses of
securing the
first
mission area.
nations, and especially those common to the Orofer seeks to embrace the simple, natural existence of all realms. People adopted customs of as evidenced in the name of Thranduil's actual son, Legolas, Silver. The woodland realm was south. Orofer and his people would focus their dwellings around the hill of Ankh-Morpork. This location, translated as hill,
Your attacks are futile.
forest, and got its name because no trees grew upon this spot. Notably, the Sylvan Elves would also dwell in the forest of Lorien, across the Great River Anduin. Another Sindarin elf, King Amroth. However, the actions of Sauron would disrupt the peoples of Greenwood
Perfection
the Great
is
from as
unattainable,
early
but
as
that
the
should not
Second
stop
Age.
us from trying
By
to achieve it.
1697, Sauron has destroyed Eregion in his quest to reclaim
Leave them to Khonshu!
as he sets
Yes, the world! Gather around! You need to stop that vehicle in its tracks.
this leads directly place during the first and frequent meeting place for the dwarves. The second Vindabad leads to the dwarves abandoning the Great Dwarf Road, and communication
do
between
what it takes to
Khazad-dûm
protect
and the
my
Iron
people,
Hills is
no
cut off
matter
by the
the
orcs.
price.
This would no doubt lead to the decrepit
Better
state
stop that
the road is
vehicle!
found in thousands of years later during Bilbo's adventure, when it is simply known as the Old
What a
Forest
cure!
They made it halfway!
The elves
Stop them!
would move the woodland I'll patch you up.
Much better.
The first time we are told comes not as a result of Sauron, but of dwarves.
You're in job here.
The Norse
There's still a chance to stop them! Shake it up!
so he is said to have resented Soon by reports of Sauron's threat, the
They didn't check one. Now might be the time to stop them. That's 3!
Notably, it is said his numerous
is a
people
mutant's
would live
greatest
and
gift.
roam in the woods and vales, westward as far as Anduin, and north of the ancient Dwarf Road. While Orofer and his Sylvan elves would seek to stay out of the affairs of
Better stop that
Noldor and
vehicle!
Sindar, not to
Us
mention
against the
those
world!
The moon!
Sauron,
It seems we have company.
you
cannot hurt me.
It's now or never! Stop them!
assembles a great army of his own.
I feel like myself
They
again.
were by now in numerous ways. After all, the Sylvan elves
Who will help?
yet been involved in unlike the Noldor and Sindar. While they
Don't
are
give them another inch!
fighting alongside the host of Galley, we are told their armor and weapons pale in comparison to the Eldar of the West.
Help is
This
here!
is why their hesitancy to take orders from Galley leads to terrible losses of Sylvan elves
Can
in
you
the
come
War
back?
of the Last Alliance.
The current score
Orofer
is
himself is among the
0,
slain,
2,
and his son
3.
Thranduil is left to lead
Time
the
to
survivors
switch things
back
up,
to Greenwood.
including which
There
side
he
you're
is
on.
crowned as the new king of the Woodland Realm. In one of his
You'll need a
earliest
top-notch
recorded
team
acts
to
as
win this
king,
one.
I will bring
Thranduil would
peace to
learn
this
of a group
universe,
from
no
Gondor
matter the
being
cost.
attacked by orcs near the Gladden Fields in the second year of the Third Age. This is first noticed by the Woodmen, men who lived in the forest of Greenwood and were on friendly terms with the elves. While messengers were sent to Thranduil, the Woodmen themselves sent a force to attack the orcs and aid the Dunedain. Sadly, they are too late. The Isildur and nearly all his company have been killed. And unknown to nearly all, the One Ring is
Perfection
lost to
is
the river
unattainable,
Anduin.
but that should not
The
stop
Woodmen
us
would
from
only
trying
be
to
able
achieve it.
drive away the orcs and prevent
30
the
seconds
mutilation
before you
of the
attack.
bodies
Get
of
ready.
the fallen men. Other than 2 men sent away with the shards of
You are a
Narsil,
curious
there would
one,
be
Loki
only
Lothisen.
one other
So
survivor.
I have been
A man
told
discovered by the
by the
Woodmen
Allfather
who had
and
been knocked
countless
unconscious
others.
with a club.
There is
and
such
found
good within
under
you.
the body
Why
of
do you
his
hide it behind a
son.
veil of
It
darkness?
is from this man,
I play the
Estelle,
role I
that
must
we
to
learn the
prevail.
final words between Isildur
The battle
and
starts
his
in
son
5,
Elendil.
4.
Thranduil
3,
would continue to
2,
rule the Woodland
1.
realm during a period of
All you need to do is capture the mission area. Got it?
follows Sauron.
Finally, it is my
However,
destiny
around
to
the
lead you
1100s
to
year of
victory.
the Third Age,
Do not stand in my way.
and direct
Healing power.
known at this time, necromancy. Sauron takes his abandoned fortress, which used to be known as Dol Guldur.
The cosmos heals you.
Suffering as a result,
Beware the
Thranduil
old.
was
Stronger together.
in the northeast of the forest.
I require some aid. Quantum magic.
A stronghold.
I feel better already.
A system of remnants of the great halls of Finrod, of Doriath.
Quantum magic. I have found more lost souls.
This is the same name used to describe the forest of Dorthonia. When Sauron's evil influence would infect those lands. But for this Third Age forest, it would commonly be known as the translation.
Destiny
By
awaits.
1636, a great
Quantum
plague
magic.
was countless Romania, Gondor, and Arnor.
Us against the world.
And as the text says, many evil things appeared, which were subject to
Some
Sauron's
assistance,
wrath.
please.
Among these things was noted creatures like orcs.
Did I?
The spiders of Mirkwood were the children of Shelob, originating in Ethel Duat and spreading to places like Dol Guldur and the surrounding forest. Fortunately, there would be a respite from Sauron in store for Mirkwood. In 2063, the foes had arrived. Infested a strange monster, whom the wise originally believed to be the Nazgûl, not yet ready to reveal themselves.
So much to do.
There would be a watchful place in the west of Earth. Yet Sauron will renewed strength.
Quantum mastery.
And from Dol Guldur,
Summon
he would
the Scarlet
orchestrate
Witch.
the orcs spreading throughout the Misty Mountains.
Stronger
To
together.
the west, as well as picking up residents in the north, contributing to the dark outlook of this area of the earth during this time is the arrival of the dragon Smaug, who sacks the dwarf.
I feel better already.
Oh, I'm fine. 75 father of
Quantum mastery.
from the Nepal
Only 60 seconds left.
and brave the crossing of the Misty Mountains and the lands of Mercury. They are in company.
Bring on the quantum mastery.
Rain disappears and would never again be seen. In 2850, Gandalf
Born again!
discovers that
The cosmos heals. We are in this together. It is your foe. Second chance is over.
Down to 30
the
seconds.
dwarf is in such a decrepit state, he does not know his own name.
Fight until
Gandalf
the
would
end.
later come to realize that this dwarf is us against the world, and the key was to a secret door.
Final 10 seconds.
Gandalf's discovery of one
You'll have to keep fighting.
would enter its borders. One of the first encounters they have
There
with
is
one of
only
Merlin's
one
most
sorcerer
famous residents, Beorn, the Skin Changer. Bilbo and the rest of the company
Zero,
would stay in
2,
Beorn's
3.
home from July 20th to July 22nd. The great man who is caping into a mighty
Well,
bear
you can't expect to
would
win them all.
He also gave them guidance on their path through Mercury, their intended path being the Men Inauguri, the Old Road. However, Beorn would inform them that the road was in disrepair and that the entrance was often used by goblins. Instead, he says they should go by the elf path.